I'm Michael J. Crawford, and I approved this video.
The following video is brought to you by the Elect Anti-Trekker in 2020 campaign. Hey, we've been electing pieces of crap for years. Why not do it literally?
The Battle of System J25 is the first episode of Star Trek to feature what would become the single most iconic and terrifying antagonist in all of Trek, the Borg. This episode is a watershed moment for Trek. After the end of the original series, Gene Roddenberry wanted to create a show more in tune with his original vision. That is, a show that featured mankind completely devoid of vice and conflict, which, to the surprise of no one except for Gene Roddenberry himself, was boring. Yes, it is a core part of Trek to be more than just an action show, but without conflict, there is no drama. And the interesting thing is that Q-Who, better than any other episode in Trek, not only shows that to have a great hero we need a great villain, but that a pacifist utopian society like the Federation from the first two seasons of TNG would never be able to last. After this episode, and continuing on to the end of Voyager, we will see the Federation continually get stronger and stronger as it faces powerful foes. It would seem that years of peace has made the Federation lazy, and years of war will in fact make them strong again. This battle has about the most simple setup possible. A powerful entity known as Q flings the Enterprise D 7,000 light-years from their current position. They were sent to the system J25, well outside the Federation's sphere of influence, and it would take 2 years, 7 months, 3 days, and 18 hours to reach the border of the Federation. Q intentionally put the Enterprise square in the path of a Borg cube, and thus our setup. The lineup for this battle is every bit as one-sided as it appears. For the Federation, we have the USS Enterprise D, a Galaxy-class starship designed primarily for scientific and diplomatic missions. While she is armed with phasers and photon torpedoes, she is not a combat vessel by design. I know some would argue with this. However, I would submit a couple of facts. One, in Deep Space Nine, when unveiling the new Defiant, Sisko clearly indicates that Starfleet had no true combat vessels. And even if you want to argue that combat was simply a secondary function of the ship, why would you purposely and knowingly endanger non-military spouses and children in combat missions? Yes, the Enterprise is capable of combat, but it's not designed for combat. The Enterprise D is commanded by Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Picard is known to be an excellent commander all round, but really stands out as one of the most skilled diplomats in Federation history. Representing the Borg is a single Borg cube. Borg ships do not have names such as we see in other races. They have designation numbers, and the designation of this particular cube was never identified. The Borg cube is a massive vessel, measuring 3 kilometers squared, and the Borg vessel features adaptive defense fields, tractor beams, and the tractor beams, by the way, also serve to drain shields, laser cutting beams, shield draining torpedoes, and regeneration abilities beyond Federation scientific understanding. The Borg ship boasts superior speed, weapons, and defenses by a wide margin over a Galaxy-class starship. The Borg ship is commanded by no one. The entire ship is a collective consciousness of all of them. Due to this collective network, they can almost instantly adapt to any form of incoming attack, and they are extremely unlikely to make mistakes since their thoughts are combined to make a superintelligence guiding the ship itself.
Part 1. First Contact.
After Q flings the Enterprise, we quickly discover that not everyone is a stranger to this part of the galaxy. It just so happens that Guinan's people, the El-Orians, are from this area, and as such, Guinan knows about the Borg. And as soon as they arrive at System J25, Guinan warns them that they should immediately head home as fast as possible.
Guinan, your people have been in this part of the galaxy.
Yes.
What can you tell us?
Only that if I were you, I'd start back now.
Now, let me explain something here. Picard trusts Guinan completely. He would, and in fact, in future episodes, actually will lay down his life and the life of the entire crew of the Enterprise based on her word alone. So when she tells him to get out of Dodge because it is too dangerous...
Captain's log, stardate 42761.9. Despite Guinan's warning, I feel compelled to investigate this unexplored sector of the galaxy before heading back.
He, of course, ignores her and decides to poke around a bit. So, after scanning some local systems, they happen to pick up a vessel on intercept course. Guinan warns Picard that this is the Borg, and they will, in fact, destroy them. So, Picard decides to try and talk to them, to no avail. Now, normally at this point, I would be talking about the intended strategies for both sides, but in this specific instance, honestly, neither side really has a strategy. The Borg do not see the Enterprise as a credible threat. They simply see the ship as raw material that they can use. When they send a single Borg over, it would be no different than sending a geologist to check out a mineral deposit. They don't see this as combat as much as just resource gathering. Meanwhile, Picard's not interested in battle. He simply wants to make friends with the Borg and ignores the repeated warnings from both Guinan and Q that the Borg were insanely dangerous. And in fact, the entire reason Q sent them here in the first place was to show them exactly how dangerous this part of the galaxy is. This is why I say that Starfleet got fat and lazy during this period. I mean, it's absolutely stupid that Picard would stand toe-to-toe with a ship like a Borg cube, knowing how dangerous it is. You would think that you would at least try to maintain a safe distance in case the Borg attack. But no, they sit there about 1,200 meters away from the Borg ship. I'm sorry, but Picard kind of deserves what he gets here.
Part 2, False Sense of Security.
After the Borg send a scout to the Enterprise and determine that it is indeed good for raw material, they decide to take the ship. They issue a single warning.
We have analyzed your defensive capabilities as being unable to withstand us. If you defend yourselves, you will be punished.
Then they engage a tractor beam to drain the shields. Now, while Picard hates using weapons, he realizes there is no hope to talk his way out of this one. So, he orders phasers to hit the cube, to no effect. Shortly after the phaser strike, the cube begins cutting the ship into small pieces for processing. At this point, desperate, Picard orders Worf to fire phasers again, only this time to use whatever force is necessary to terminate the beam.
With whatever force necessary. Terminate that beam. Fire when ready.
Wait a minute. You mean that Picard was so dead set against using force that when being attacked by a superior enemy force, he responds by holding back? Really? It is truly amazing that the Federation is even still around at this point. Well, Worf unleashes the full force of the phasers, and it does do significant damage to the cube.
Again, Mr. Wolf.
Well, thanks to Worf now using full power on the phasers, they break the tractor beam. So you would think, of course, that they would immediately try to make their escape. But first, Picard wants to see how badly they've been hit.
Tractor beam is released, sir. Force field is maintaining our hull integrity.
Damage report.
Coming in, sir. Sections 27, 28, 29 on decks 4, 5, and 6. Destroyed.
Casualties.
18 were in that section and are missing.
So, of course, now that Picard knows how bad they've been hit, he orders for them to escape. Or maybe not.
What is the condition of the alien ship?
They have sustained damage to 20% of their vessel. Life support's minimal.
Okay. So now he knows how bad they've been hit and how bad the Borg has been hit, and so now he makes his escape.
Conference.
What?
Part 3. Picard is a dumbass.
My apologies to those that may think that it's unfair to call Picard a dumbass. However, had Picard listened to Q at the beginning of this episode, they never would have ran into the Borg in the first place.
Well, you may not trust me, but you do need me. You're not prepared for what awaits you.
How can we be prepared for that which we do not know? But I do know that we are ready to encounter it.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. That's why we're out here.
Had Picard listened to Guinan when they arrived at System J25, they might have been able to avoid running into the cube.
What can you tell us?
Only that if I were you, I'd start back now.
Had they used full power to the phasers right away, they could have avoided the loss of 18 lives. And had he run as soon as the cube was damaged, they could have escaped. As it stands, Picard parks the Enterprise just 1,200 meters from the Borg ship, not even trying to get a safe distance while attempting to repair the shields. Picard does not even consider the fact that the Borg could be repairing their own ship. Instead, he holds staff meetings with his senior officers and sends an away team over to the cube to learn about the Borg. This is just extremely poor judgment by Picard. And before anyone suggests that Picard should have thought they were all dead because they did not read any life signs, they didn't read any life signs when the Borg first arrived either.
I can identify no living quarters.
Life signs.
There is no indication of life.
So yeah. Anyway, Riker and the away team figure out that surprise, the Borg are in fact repairing the ship. So the Enterprise finally attempts to escape.
Part 4. The Chase.
The Enterprise warps away as fast as it can. However, the Borg has absolutely no trouble keeping pace. And even in hot pursuit, the Borg managed to finish repairs to the cube. In an attempt to slow the cube down, Riker orders a photon torpedo spread, which has zero effect. The Borg then return fire with a shield-draining torpedo. The first shot drains the Enterprise shields by 12%. A second attack from the Borg, and the shields are now down 41%. The Enterprise fires a second volley of photon torpedoes, and like the first, it has zero effect on the Borg. Q then offers a brief, but actually quite accurate description of why the Borg are so dangerous.
You can't outrun them. You can't destroy them. If you damage them, the essence of what they are remains. They regenerate and keep coming. Eventually, you will weaken. Your reserves will be gone. They are relentless.
A third shot from the Borg, and the shields go down completely. Then, the Borg fire another shot that disables the warp drive.
Captain, we've just lost the warp engines.
Now, the Enterprise is helpless as the Borg close in for the kill. Locking on its tractor once again, Riker is happy to go down fighting and orders more photon torpedoes to be launched, despite the fact that with the shields down and at such close proximity, the detonation from the photon torpedoes will likely destroy the Enterprise. Before he can give the order to launch, however, Picard grovels to Q, and Q decides to spare them.
You wanted me to say, I need you? I need you!
While Picard and most of his crew survive, the encounter was a complete an overwhelming victory for the Borg.
Epilogue.
While I have been rather hard on Picard during this breakdown, I happen to like the episode Q-Who quite a bit. It clearly demonstrates that the Federation, under the vision of Gene Roddenberry, would be completely overwhelmed by an aggressive species. Early in this episode, Picard tried to defend the statements of Riker as not being smug or arrogant.
We'll just have to do the best we can without you.
What justifies that smugness?
Not smugness, not arrogance. But we're resolute, we're determined, and your help is not required.
But the truth is, they were smug and arrogant. And the honest truth is that Star Trek The Next Generation had basically been a show of a group of arrogant people preaching their arrogant ways to lesser people. This was a big change for the show. Thanks to the events at System J25, the Federation begins developing new starships and new weapons, and they eventually regain what they had lost. Story-wise, this may not be the very best episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, but it truly changed Trek from that moment on. In the end, I'm going to give Q-Who a 7 out of 10. The pacing for the first half of the episode was, frankly, just bad. But it introduced a truly iconic villain and pushed Trek into a positive direction. Take care.
You son of a bitch, anti-tracker!